Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Subscription Strategies, How to Counter Fraud and Lower Chargebacks. I want to thank you all for joining us. I know this is just about the busiest time of year for many of you, and it really speaks volumes of the importance of the topic, of the stature that the subscription model has attained, that so many of you have taken the time to sit in today, and we appreciate it. I'm so thrilled to have Sanjeev Tanetti here today to take us through this presentation. Sanjeev is Group Product Manager for Payments and Fraud Management at Recurly. I'm sure many of you are aware of Recurly and its experience working for subscription merchants. Sanjeev is going to share some of his insight gathered from his work there, but he also spent time on the other side of the fence as well as a merchant, so he brings that perspective to our conversation today as well. I want to mention that we will be taking questions from the audience at the end, so please use your the question space if you'd like to ask something. We will have time for a few. If we don't get to all your questions, I do apologize for that. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn over the floor to Sanjeev. Sanjeev, thanks for coming, and take it away.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar. My name is Sanjeev Tanetti. I manage the product initiatives at Recurly for payments and fraud solutions. Recurly offers an enterprise-grade hosted subscription management system for businesses that are primarily subscription-based. At Recurly, I get insights into some of the merchants, like how their fraud patterns are evolving and how do they counter fraud. So before joining Recurly, I was at Yahoo. I was managing the payments platform as well as fraud tools at Yahoo. I was working with fraud analysts to understand how different fraudsters are attacking Yahoo's businesses. I understand firsthand how problematic or how big of a distraction fraud is, and chargebacks dealing with those. So it's a big problem. And today what I'd like to share is my experience, build upon my experience, and share some of the nuggets that I learned, and hopefully these will help you lower your chargeback rate and also fight some of the fraudulent activity. So with that, I'll just kick off the presentation. So what we talk about today is just build upon the context, and fraud is on the rise. You all keep hearing about it. The second thing I'll also talk about is some of the holiday statistics that Recurly did, some analysis on the trends we've seen in subscription businesses. I'll also talk about that, and also the impact of fraud and chargebacks on merchants' business. And then take a little deeper dive into what really happens behind the scenes when a card is stolen, and eventually how it does it translate into a chargeback. And then also share some of the best practices that we've seen work for our merchants. So that would be the agenda. So with that, I think the first thing we all have been hearing, fraud is increasing. And CNP, based on a couple of research, the online fraud is expected to increase to $7.2 billion by 2020. And overall losses because of just the card fraudulent activity would be $35 billion in 2020. So that's a lot of online fraud happening, and a couple of reasons why the fraud is increasing online. First thing, a couple of things, big trends we've seen is, first of all, the mobile activity is increasing, and all of us have so many mobile devices. And these mobile devices are part of the e-commerce platforms where we search for products, we buy the products, and we do a lot of transactions on the phone. Last Thanksgiving, I was in Vegas, and I was actually planning to buy some of the stuff, and I used my phone. I was not carrying my laptop, so I used my phone to purchase a few deals that I was interested in. So in traditional e-commerce, this would be like a fraudulent transaction, but the patterns are evolving. Everybody's using their phone to purchase. So that's one of the things, and it's still evolving, the mobile usage, so nobody has a clear picture of what is a fraudulent transaction on a mobile phone versus what's not. The other trend that's happening is EMV adoption. And with the EMV adoption, as merchants keep on adopting it, the fraudulent activity on the brick and mortar stores is becoming harder. So what happens with that is more and more fraudsters are moving online. So again, that's another thing that's adding to the online fraud. Couple of things that are also happening are there's data everywhere. Like all of us consumers, we share data, and because of these social networks or even the health records coming online, everything is online. So there's so much data everywhere. So fraudsters have more opportunity to get all the data from different sources. The one more thing is also the fraudsters, their tools that we use to do the fraudulent activity, it's getting more and more sophisticated. So a lot of things happening, and due to which the online fraud is increasing. One thing I would like to share is Recurly's own research. We do a research regularly, and this is a research we conducted for this Thanksgiving 4-day weekend. And what we found was, while e-commerce is growing, according to Adobe Digital Insights, it's growing at 12% year over year, but subscription businesses are growing even faster. So we saw that our merchants, on an average, grew 16 to 17% over this 4-day weekend, and some of our top performers more than doubled their business during this 4-day long weekend. So it's not just e-commerce, but also a lot of subscription businesses that are growing. So it's a very interesting activity we've noticed. The other thing that I'll also quickly point out, I know a lot of merchants deal with this, but what's the impact of fraud and chargebacks? So there's definitely financial losses, there's revenue you lose, there's penalties you incur, but there's also operational inefficiencies that build up fighting this fraud. And there's also some intangible damage that happens to your brand reputation, because when you're as a merchant, you're in the media and associated with fraud, it's a problem that you want to avoid. So there's a lot of downsides of having a fraud problem. So one of the things I'd like to share is to take a deeper look into the fraud ecosystem. How is the card stolen, and after it's stolen, how does it change hands, and how does it end up into becoming a chargeback? So I think just understanding the different players in the ecosystem, at least with that, you understand as a business, like who are targeting my business and how can I fight fraud? So with that, and in the media, it's always coming up. There's so many merchants or retailers being hacked that the report says that one of the two cards is your data is out there, so it's already out in the wild. Whether it will be used or not, that's a different question. But there's so many breaches that have happened in the past, and these are just some I put in the slide. So I'd like to introduce, these are my own terms just for this presentation, so that talking about these people becomes easier. So there's stealers. So these are the people who actually steal the cards. They scout for the good merchants who are a good target and find vulnerabilities in their system and steal the cards. And then there are validators. So when stealers steal the cards, validators take it on and get this bulk data dump, and then validate the cards, how many cards are really valid and how many can be actually used. And then there are liquidators. These are the people who actually turn this credit card, stolen cards, into cash. Basically, their whole motivation is to, how can I get money out of these cards? So these are the three terms I made up. Hopefully these will become popular, but these are my own terms. So this is the ecosystem. So for this example, let's say a large online retailer and a consumer purchases a product for the large retailer. What happens is, let's assume the card is stolen, is stored on site, on premises for this large e-commerce merchant. So once that happens, fraudsters or our own stealers, they find a good target, and then they find vulnerabilities in the system. They steal these cards. Now, these guys have really sophisticated tools, and they're really waiting for the right moment to steal the cards. So once they steal the cards, what they end up doing is sell these cards in the black market to set up people who are validators. And these validators are the people who get all these cards, what they do is they also sort of finesse the data quality that they get from the stealers. So they go to different social sites just to get all the data so that the quality of the card data is much more complete. And then they start validating these cards. And the way these guys validate the cards is go to different merchant sites on the checkout pages, just automate scripts so that they can just enter this credit card information and get a response from the checkout pages whether it's valid or not. So based on that, what they do next is they turn these cards over to the liquidators. And liquidators take these cards and they want to buy products that are more liquid in nature that can be easily sold off so that they can get hands like maybe Apple products or maybe just jewelry or maybe watches. So they buy these products which can be sold easily and turned into cash. So their challenge is obviously getting their hands on the products, take possession of these goods, and then sell them off. So eventually what happens after this is the real card owner sees a transaction that he had never authorized for on his credit card statement. So when they do that, they call up their issuing banks, say, hey, I never authorized this card. And eventually that becomes a chargeback, which is a painful experience for both the merchant as well as the consumer. So that's the fraud ecosystem. So there's really highly organized ecosystem where every individual sort of has a role to play. So it's good to know as a merchant who is really attacking your business and then build upon that, what can I do for them and to avoid their fraud back. So I think the first thing to understand is, as a business, do we actually have a fraud problem or not? So there are various indicators we could be using also to understand who is attacking my site. So one of the things we see is when somebody is under a fraud attack, they see increased velocity. Say the number of signups or the purchases increase a lot. That's good to know as a business that, oh my God, more signups are happening or more purchases are happening. But it could be, take that with a grain of salt because it could be a fraudulent attack too. So you want to be on your toes. The second thing we also see is maybe the same emails or devices or IP addresses or the orders are coming in from the same geolocations. So something you want to see that if the velocity is increasing on any of these attributes, you want to be on the alert and say monitor these transactions. So that's one thing. The other thing is if the order size increases all of a sudden, the average order size, say for your business, if the order size is like $40 and all of a sudden it goes up to $100, so that means something is wrong. So you may want to monitor that and see what's happening. The other thing is if certain kinds of products are being purchased more than you would expect, again, that's another indicator that something's going on. You may want to watch out for. Also, if traffic is coming from questionable devices, for example, nobody's ever bought from using a mobile device, but all of a sudden there's a lot of requests coming from a mobile device. Any trends that change which were not totally expected or not based off your marketing campaigns, you may want to pay attention to those. Also, if it's coming from different locations, those that you don't sell your business in, again, you want to be careful about that. The other indicator I will also point out is if you end up reviewing more than 10% of your orders manually, that means you're spending a lot of time reviewing orders and you may be under a fraud attack. You don't realize that, but you are. The other indicator I'll also talk about is chargeback rate. So chargeback rate is a good indicator, and if chargeback rate is over 0.5% or 50 basis points for your business, that means you want to be careful about, and there is some fraud activity on your business. But there are a couple of things I want to note about chargeback rates. Why chargeback rate? So this slide shows that chargeback rate, 60% of your chargeback rate is generally because of fraudulent activity. So the main reason for those chargebacks is fraud. So that's why it's a great indicator. And actually, this statistics come from our fraud prevention partner count. So they did this research to find out what's really happening behind the chargebacks. So chargebacks, most of the chargebacks are because of fraudulent activity. But what we also found out was the chargebacks are a lagging indicator. They're not a leading indicator of whether the fraud is actually happening right now, but it's something that happened in the past. Chargebacks show up 1 to 3 months or 4 months later. So it's not really a leading indicator. It's something that happened in the past. So you want to be a little careful that, hey, if chargebacks are increasing now, it's not because you are having a fraud problem right now. You could be, but that's indicating something back in the past. So just take that with a grain of salt, but something that you should always monitor. It's always a good indicator. And chargeback rate is a sort of an industry standard where payment processors, the card networks, everybody is paying attention to for each business. So with that, I'll share some of the best practices that we found as a service provider and also from my past experience, and that hopefully will help you fight off some of this fraudulent activity. So the first thing I'll talk about is these are basic validations, the CVV checks, or adding a CAPTCHA, or doing validations on the address, or even validating the email address during a sign-up, or also validating a phone number during a sign-up. So something that the validators who are automating the system, it's hard for them. The idea is to raise the bar enough so that validators don't hit your side but go to another side. So that's the idea. So these validations still work. They raise the bar a little bit, but you want to be on your toes, making sure that you are not falling prey to these fraudsters. So that's the first thing. That's the basic set of rules that work reasonably well. The other thing I will also say is there's some manual work that's required, or some monitoring that as a merchant you should be doing, because fraud patterns keep evolving, and the kinds of attacks that you would see today may change, and you may see different patterns evolving. So a couple of things, again, as I mentioned about the velocity checks. So some of the velocity checks, again, like geolocation based or device based, or just the orders that are coming in, whether they're coming from the same emails or they're purchasing the same objects, same products. So something like that. So you just want to make sure that you're paying attention to the velocity checks. And the other thing is how many number of orders are coming in, and the size of the orders. If different kinds of products or more products are being purchased all of a sudden, it could be an indicator for fraud. So you just want to make sure. The last thing I would also say is you want to make sure that you are paying attention to the orders, and if you see like more and more automated data coming in, like for example the email addresses look like totally weird and made up, random, or just the addresses that don't look right, could be anything, but just these validators, because they're programming and scripting the fraud attack, so a lot of this data could be made up. So something that you want to pay attention to, and something you want to constantly look out for. So that's some of the on the monitoring side. The other thing I will also say is, while monitoring and adding these checks is great, but eventually what would be a good spot to be is automating some of these checks for you. So the velocity checks, for example, like, hey, I don't want to accept more than 2 orders from the same device in an hour, or something like that. So just some kind of automation that would help you. The other thing I'll also mention is, what if as a merchant you had access to, like, hey, you know what, I know all the stolen cards in the world, I know all the bad devices associated with cards, I know all the geolocations that are known or more have a higher risk profile. So if you had that, you would, it's good to be automating those kinds of things, but it's hard, I understand that, but some kind of automation, as much as you can build or you can rely upon your service provider, that would be good. The other thing is automated data again. For example, if email address doesn't look right, you can monitor and try to block those, but again, fraudsters will keep on making new kinds of addresses or new kinds of patterns that's really hard to keep up with. So something at Recurly, what we realized is, while this all looks great, we could be building for our merchants. We realized that, there are specialized technologies who just focus on fighting fraud that also at Recurly we partner with, and we provide that same infrastructure, same kind of technology to our merchants. So these are some of the things that we found really helping merchants fight off the fraudulent activity as well as lowering their chargeback rates. The couple of things I did not mention in this presentation, one of the things is friendly fraud. So this is fraud when, it's not really a stolen card, but some people who are trying to exploit the system. For example, if you have free trials on your service, people just sign up for the free trial, and then, they just eventually pay a couple of bills, and then they turn that into a chargeback. So, it's something as a merchant you think it's fraud, but as a consumer they don't think it's a fraud, but eventually it's a friendly fraud, it's loss of business. So I didn't mention that. The second thing I also didn't mention was about disputing the chargebacks. So there's a process when chargebacks come in, you can dispute and try to provide enough evidence so that you can get that money back. So again, that's a different process. I didn't want to mention that. I wanted to present something that you can fight the chargebacks proactively. So there's definitely efficiencies you can build after the chargeback eventually comes in, because as a business, you can't really avoid all of the chargebacks. You'll still see some of the chargebacks. And one other thing I would also like to mention is there's a healthy rate of chargebacks. If your chargeback is too low, that means maybe you're not accepting enough transactions. Maybe you're being too aggressive with the fraud checks you have in place. So maybe you're leaving some money on the table. So you just want to make sure that chargeback rates being too low is also not a good thing. So you want to have some checks in place so that your chargeback is at a healthy rate. So with that, I'll summarize. As a merchant, I know fighting fraud is not fun, and also you don't want to have too many checks in place before a sign-up happens. So you want to avoid the friction. You want more people coming into the door. You want to sell to more people. But at the same time, you have to have enough checks in place so that fraud rate is at a healthy level. So you have to understand what's the acceptable buying patterns or the patterns on your website. That's one important thing to know. And as you do business, I'm sure as a merchant, you'll understand more and more. The other thing I'll mention is during the holidays, all these patterns go haywire. Especially there's a lot more transactions coming in, the velocity changes, the order size changes, the kinds of products that are bought are different devices are used that you've never seen before. So it's just trying to wrapping your head around, what do I expect like holiday pattern to be. It's pretty important as a business. And then also the recommendation would be like automate as much as fraud management activities as you can. Otherwise, it's really hard to stay on top of this fraud activity and fighting the fraud proactively. So yeah, with that, just stay alert, keep monitoring your system, but also automate as much as you can so that you can do your business better and not focus on fraud, which becomes a big headache, especially during the holiday time. So with that, that's all I had to talk about. With that, we'll open it up for questions.
Great. All right, Sanjeev. Thank you very much. Yes, we do have a few questions. Before we get to them, I did want to mention that if you came into the webinar late or there are slides that you want to see, the presentation will be made available in a recording, and that information will be sent out to everyone who registered for the information, for the webinar when we're done. But yes, Sanjeev, we did have a couple of questions, so we can take those quickly. We're in really good shape for time. The first one is very simple. It says, don't payment gateways offer fraud protection? So simple question, maybe not so simple an answer.
Yes, that's right. So this is a great question. Yes. the payment gateways do offer fraud protection. There are basic checks they offer. For example, maybe the CVV checks, the 3-digit, 4-digit number on the card, whether that matches or not, whether the address matches or not. There's basic checks the gateways offer. And let's take a step back. The main business for the payment gateways is to allow as many transactions as possible. So with that in mind, they don't specialize in fraud fighting capabilities. They do offer it as a value-added service, but their whole business is around as many transactions go through, let's do that. So while they offer these basic fraud protection, it's not enough for you to automate your system completely. So you may want to look for other tools and technologies that will help you lower your fraud protection. And for some merchants, the technology the payment gateways offer is probably sufficient, but as your business grows and you become even a more prime target for the fraudsters, you may want to have additional tools and technologies at your disposal. So in a nutshell, payment gateways do offer fraud protection, but it may or may not be enough for you as a merchant.
Okay, that leads right into the next question. It's you know, from what do payment gateways offer to sort of how do we evaluate that? This question asks, we are launching a new subscription-based web content delivery business in February. I'm trying to finalize my payment gateway. It would be good to understand how I choose the right payment gateway and what tools they offer to fight fraud. So can you go into that a little bit?
Cool. That's a great question again. And we do deal with a lot of merchants who reach out to us and they're trying to figure out how do I go online, what payment gateway do I pick, and then, you know, eventually once they start processing or they build a reasonable business, how do I fight the fraud? So that's a great question. So what I would say is, you know, while payment gateways, I think as a business, the mindset that we have at Recurly is, you know, you pick the payment processor that can help you get more transactions through, who can help you with your approval rates, and who is the right fit for your business. And because the size of the business matters, the currencies that you collect is important. So you may want to look at a lot of different attributes just picking a payment gateway, but it's not the fraud tools that they provide. You don't want to pick a payment gateway just because of that. So yeah, you want to pick the right gateway. And Recurly has written a long blog post, a 4-part blog post, just picking the right payment gateways. So if anybody is interested, we are happy to share the links with you guys. But it's a very comprehensive list. What's the right way of looking at payment gateways and picking the right one? So that's on the payment processors. But also, what tools payment gateways offer for fraud? I just talked about that a little. But as a service provider at Recurly, what we did is we built the fraud fighting capabilities into our own solution, so that merchants, when they come to Recurly, they don't have to worry about the fraud tools. They can pick any payment gateway that's appropriate for them. And once they have a fraud problem, they can always turn the fraud fighting capabilities in Recurly. So that's the mindset. And hopefully, you know, you want to pick the right gateway that helps you get more transactions, can help you with the approval rates, help you collect money through as many channels as possible. But the fraud solution, it's probably an augmentation of the payment gateway solution.
Great. This question is responding to something that you, Sanjeev, mentioned during your presentation, which was be careful of orders with automated data. The questioner is asking for what exactly you meant by that, and could you give some examples?
So the automation, definitely. I think a couple of things that we talk about. The automation is, for example, when somebody is under a fraud attack, what happens is there's a set of devices that are used, and actually validators. Let's take a step back and talk about validators. So when they want to do these automated checks on merchant side, what they do is they rent out certain web servers or something, and they run their script off this web server farm, and they are using that to get to this checkout pages and try to validate. So what happens with that is there's certain set of devices that are being used to test the credit card on the checkout pages. So for example, if you see a lot of transactions coming from the same IP addresses or same kinds of devices or with the same email addresses or certain cards, things like that. So you want to have some velocity checks in place for those. So that's kind of an automation where you want to block these transactions because you know that these are sort of devices that are known for fraudulent activity. So that's kind of thing that you could be automating. The other thing you could be automating, and this is a very specific example, as a business, if you know that, say, prepaid cards, the same Visa branded prepaid cards maybe are not good for your business, maybe you want to just block those instead of doing it after the fact. So maybe you want to automate some of that, like, hey, all the prepaid cards, I don't want to accept that. So things like that. There's a lot of different other things you could also be doing is, for example, if the billing address and the shipping address of the product are more than 100 miles or more than 500 miles away, that is a flag that says, it's a fraudulent transaction or, something that I want to closely monitor. Maybe I want to review the transaction manually, something like that. So there's a lot of things you could be automating and making sure that if it's a red flag or maybe even if it's an orange flag or a suspicious activity, you want to pay attention to that closely.
Okay, great. The next, oh, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
And DJ, I think I'll add one more thing. At Recurly, what we did is with our fraud solution, what we build is there's some basic set of features we offer to our merchants, as well as this will also work for some of the advanced features. So people like only the velocity checks if they want that, and I don't want to do business with certain geographies, so they can easily block that. But for certain customized rules, for example, the prepaid cards, or any orders above $100, I want to manually review them, things like that, they can easily be automated within Recurly. So just a whole suite of customized problems can be automated.
Okay, great. The next question actually goes in the other direction from automation to manual reviews. The questioner asks, how do you feel about manual reviews in a subscription environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And manual reviews is not a bad thing. Eventually, you want to automate as much as you can, and it totally depends on the nature of the business. For example, if it's a small business and the order size is like $3 or $4 or $5, then automation is a lot of overhead and may not be worth it. But if it's like $100 subscription or $500 subscription business, then it's not bad to manually review those transactions because it's really worth it. So that definitely depends, and also depends on the velocity of the orders. If the orders are coming in very, 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 very fast, you don't want to be hiring a lot of manual reviewers, and you don't want to be just like spending a lot of money building a lot of inefficiencies for the manual reviews. So you want to make sure you have a healthy mix, and it totally depends on the kinds of business that you have. But I would like to say automation, you want to automate as much as you can so that you can scale your business, you can pay attention to growing your business than actually handling fraud.
Okay. I think that that will do it for us, Sanjeev. That's about, we've run over a half an hour at this point. I really, really appreciate the time you've taken and engaged with all the folks on the line. And thank you to everyone who has joined us today to listen about how to control your fraud and your chargebacks in your subscription business. It's a really interesting topic, and it is really, as I mentioned at the top, the subscription model has really taken off over the last few years, and learning how to deal with this problem is important in this environment, especially, Sanjeev, as you mentioned, with the explosion of mobile as well. So thank you so much for your time. As I mentioned before, a recording of the webinar will be available to all who signed up. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Sanjeev, for your presentation.
Thank you so much for hosting us, DJ. Thanks, everyone.
You're very welcome.